Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're doing something pretty interesting. We've got this collection of sources, and we're going to dig in, really pull out the core ideas, maybe find some surprises.
Sounds good. What's the focus?
We're centering on this text, the Grimoire Quantique des Fréquences Sacrées. And we'll use some other materials to kind of extrapolate, see what the potential uses might be if we really understood the resonant frequencies of all the elements.
Okay. Elemental frequencies. That's definitely stepping into some fascinating territory. The Grimoire itself, it presents this idea that elements vibrate, and those vibrations have, well, effects.
Exactly. So we'll explore that, but also bring in other perspectives on sound, vibration, maybe even some physics.
Right. Give it some context. So the Grimoire by Marc-Alain and Anya, you said.
And they introduced this concept, Technologie Harmonique Quantique Vibratoire, THQV for short.
THQV.
And it's not just theory. They actually talk about, like, a device concept. So let's maybe start there. What's the basic idea behind this THQV device they describe?
Well, the core idea seems to be generating very specific frequencies electronically. They mention components, like an 809833 chip.
Which is?
It's a programmable waveform generator, essentially. And that's controlled by an Arduino microcontroller, which acts like the brains of the operation.
Okay. Standard enough electronics so far.
Yeah, and then the signal gets amplified and sent out, probably through, a speaker or maybe some kind of tactile transducer.
Right.
It's got an OLED screen for display, maybe a dial, a rotary encoder for input. And the idea is you'd select an element, say, iron or calcium.
Lithium's mentioned.
Right, lithium. And the device would output what the Grimoire claims is that element's specific resonant frequency.
But it gets more detailed than just presets, doesn't it? There was something about a web interface.
Yes, exactly. They describe this interface where you can input more specific parameters, the atomic number Z plus these other values, N1 and N2, and a scaling factor.
Which really suggests there's a calculation behind it all, not just a lookup table.
Precisely. It implies a formula is being used to derive these frequencies, allowing for, more fine-tuning.
Okay, now this is where it gets really specific. The Grimoire lists frequencies and what they supposedly do, therapeutically.
Yeah, there's quite a list.
Like selenium, 648 hertz for antioxidation, iodine, 1976 hertz, thyroid cognition, manganese, 388 hertz, bones, tendons.
Chromium, 42204 for blood sugar, molybdenum, 4320, liver detox, lithium, again, 756 hertz, mood stabilization. It's extensive.
Potassium, sodium, chlorine for various balances. Iron, 756 hertz again for oxygen transport, vitality. Zinc, copper. Even oxygen itself at 1296 hertz for fatigue and inflammation.
It's really drawn these direct lines, isn't it, between an element's supposed frequency and a specific biological function or benefit.
Yeah. I mean, take selenium. We know it's involved in antioxidant enzymes.
And they link its frequency directly to antioxidation. Same with iodine and the thyroid. It's presented as this really targeted vibrational intervention.
But we should be clear, right? These specific frequency function links, they aren't exactly mainstream science at this point.
Oh, definitely not. This is the specific framework presented in the Grimoire. It's a unique perspective linking known elemental roles with these proposed vibrational signatures.
And they even suggest where on the body to apply them. Solar plexus, pineal gland, lower back. Specific zones for specific issues.
Right, along with the protocol. Hydration, relaxation, then applying the frequency, sound, light, or vibration for a certain duration.
Sounds like they envision it being used in, well, integrative medicine, maybe energy clinics, even at home, but, with guidance.
Yeah, aimed at what they call bioenergetic harmonization. They even mention a simplified prototype idea, just a generator, a transducer, and the frequency database. Makes it sound quite practical in concept.
Now, Marc-Alain, one of the authors, he talks about calculating this. Fréquences vibratoires moléculaires, FVM.
Yes, and he suggests a method involving finding relevant frequency sources, reducing them harmonically, maybe a weighted average, possibly factoring in atomic mass, valence electrons. It gets quite technical.
But importantly, the text also says elements don't just have one frequency, right? It's more like a spectrum.
That's a really crucial point they make. It acknowledges complexity. The vibrational characteristics aren't just a single note. They depend on the element's state pure in a molecule, ionized.
The context matters.
Exactly. The analytical level, nuclear, electronic, vibrational, and the specific application context all played a role. They stress using fundamental physical frequencies like, and then adjusting.
Like tuning an instrument based on the room acoustics.
Sort of, yeah. The same element might sound different depending on its chemical environment or energy state.
And underpinning all this is Mark Alain's core belief, right? That matter is vibration. He even points to spectroscopy as evidence.
That's the fundamental premise, and his vision is that by using these frequencies, therapeutically, you can restore coherence, sort of nudge things back into balance at a vibrational level.
So trying to bridge the esoteric with, well, some principles of physics.
That seems to be the aim, which actually leads us quite nicely into cymatics.
Right, because if things vibrate, cymatics is about seeing that vibration. Our source on it talks about making wave patterns visible.
Yeah, using media like sand or water or paste on a vibrating plate, you get these incredible, intricate patterns. Think Chladni figures.
And pioneers like Galileo, Hooke, Hans Chinny, John Stuart Reid in his Cymoscope more recently.
Exactly. So the connection to the grimoire is, well, if each element has a unique resonant frequency, as the grimoire suggests.
Then cymatics could potentially let us see the pattern for each element, like a visual fingerprint.
That's the intriguing possibility, isn't it? A unique visual signature for iron's frequency versus oxygen's frequency. The cymatic source mentions its use in musicology, oceanography, understanding wave dynamics visually.
Seeing the element's song as a shape, that's pretty wild.
It is. And then you think about harmonics.
Our 11th harmonic text talks about those multiples of the fundamental frequency. Lower harmonics often show simple geometric relationships.
Yeah, simple ratios often create clear visual patterns in cymatics.
So the question becomes, if elements have these fundamental frequencies, could their higher harmonics also create unique, maybe more complex, geometric patterns when visualized?
It's a logical extension. The 11th harmonic source does suggest higher harmonics get more complex, maybe less obviously geometric in the simple sense.
But still potentially structured patterns, right? The cymatics research also mentions seeing platonic solids in vibrating media.
Exactly. These fundamental geometric forms emerging from vibration. It links frequency directly to geometry, so perhaps elemental frequencies and their harmonics have inherent geometric expressions.
Which connects back to ideas about sound healing. We looked at the perfect fifth and the sound healing and therapy overview.
And they established this long history, right? Ancient cultures recognizing that certain sound intervals, like the perfect fifth, felt harmonious, maybe even healing.
The perfect fifth source goes deeper, suggesting everything is vibration, and even consciousness plays a role at the subatomic level.
Which positions sound structured vibration as a potentially powerful tool for influencing things at a fundamental level? Body, mind.
And we saw that case study in the other source, using tuning forks for arthritis and stress, specific frequencies for specific issues.
Yeah, mentioning auto-tuners and other instruments, it provides a practical example. Even if the mechanism isn't fully understood by conventional medicine, the mention of biosonic forks also points to the value placed on frequency precision in sound healing.
It's interesting seeing these ancient sound ideas potentially aligning with this very specific, element-focused frequency framework from the Grimoire.
Definitely creates some resonance, doesn't it?
Okay, let's quickly touch on the other sources for context. The Cymatics paper mentioned the Big Bang.
Right, the idea that the early universe involved light and sound waves transforming into energy and matter. It frames vibration as absolutely fundamental to existence.
A cosmic perspective supporting the matter is vibration idea.
Pretty much. Then we had the Theravada Buddhist view,
which sometimes sees instrumental music negatively in religious practice. A real contrast to the Grimoire actively using frequencies.
It just shows how differently sound and vibration can be viewed, you know? Tool for healing versus potential distraction. Depends on the context and belief system.
And finally, Steiner's ideas from Monsignor Steiner. Developing inner perception to hear the language of the soul in nature's sounds.
Which suggests another pathway to understanding vibrational realities, not just through tech, but through, cultivated inner sensitivity. It echoes the idea that there's more going on vibrationally than we usually perceive.
Okay, so we've got the Grimoire's framework, the visual potential via cymatics, the role of harmonics and geometry, the sound healing context, these broader views. Now let's pull it together. Let's extrapolate. If we really knew the resonant frequencies for all the elements, what could we potentially do with that knowledge?
Well, building on the Grimoire's therapeutic claims, the most obvious area is targeted healing, right? Imagine precisely addressing an elemental imbalance, a deficiency, or maybe even toxicity with the right frequency or combination.
Beyond just general wellness frequencies, really specific biotuning.
Exactly. And what about materials? Could focused resonant frequencies change the structure, the properties of materials? Could we manipulate matter non-invasively?
Material science applications. And environmentally, could we use elemental frequencies to harmonize spaces? Counteract dissonant vibes, maybe.
Potentially. Or even mitigate certain pollutants if their resonant frequencies could be used to break them down or neutralize them. Speculative, of course, but possible.
What about energy? The Grimoire hints at bioenergetics. Could resonance play a role in new energy generation or storage methods?
Or catalysis, using specific frequencies to speed up or slow down chemical reactions involving target elements. That could revolutionize chemistry.
Wow. And art. Imagine art based on the actual vibrational patterns of elements.
Yeah.
Cymatic visualizations, soundscapes built from elemental frequencies.
A whole new aesthetic linked to the building blocks of the universe.
And just basic science. Understanding these frequencies could be a fundamental new tool for probing the nature of matter itself.
Absolutely. It could open up whole new avenues for physics and chemistry, a deeper layer of understanding reality.
But the Grimoire itself raises a caution, doesn't it? About ethics.
Yes, very explicitly. It calls for careful structuring, validation, limiting commercial exploitation, protecting what it calls personal vibratory data. There's an awareness of potential misuse.
Needs careful handling if this knowledge were ever fully realized.
No question. Responsibility would be key.
Okay, so wrapping this deep dive up, we've journeyed through the Grimoire Quantique, its ideas about elemental frequencies and healing.
We've connected it to the visual world of cymatics, the mathematical beauty of harmonics, the history of sound healing.
And touched on these wider cosmic and philosophical perspectives on vibration.
And while fully mapping and applying all elemental frequencies is, a huge leap from where we are now.
The potential seems vast. Healing, materials, environment, energy, art, fundamental science. It's mind-boggling, really.
It truly is a rich area for thought and maybe future research.
So the final thought to leave you with.
Yeah.
If everything is vibration, as so many of these sources suggest in different ways, what else is waiting to be discovered just by learning to listen or look at the fundamental frequencies that make up our world?
What other potentials are encoded in the vibrations all around us?
Something to ponder. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
Thanks, everyone.